Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis. As always, here with my co-host and Hall of Famer and 2-week in-person attendee of the U.S. Open, Mr. Steve Flink. We are
Yeah,
here
this
to
year,
do
this
our
year I
U.S.
went
Open
I went one better this year, David. 15 days.
15 days as it started on a Sunday. We
Yeah.
are here to do our U.S. Open recap. We're going to get Steve's thoughts on a number of players, but really not that big of surprise. The two winners in Aryna Sabalenka and Carlos Alcaraz, and we're going to get into that. Steve, high level thoughts on the, I guess, what do we call it, the fortnight when it's 15 days? I guess we can.
I think we can still. Yeah, we can get away with that. I think so. Yeah. No, look, it was a good tournament over. We didn't have as many gripping, spectacular five setters as we have had in some years where they started in the early rounds and continued, but it was still very good tennis. And as you say, worthy winners, and it certainly held my interest. No, I enjoyed it. It was a good way to end the summer and end the Grand Slam season.
I think for the women, if we start with the women's final, I thought both finalists had such a good story to tell. And we can start with the finalist and Amanda Anisimova, losing 6-0, 6-0 in a Wimbledon final to Iga Swiatek, who then she winds up beating in the quarterfinals. I mean, what an incredible mental hurdle that is. And she didn't win the first game for until a couple of games. You know that was weighing on her mind. She backs that up with a win against Naomi Osaka, and then she winds up playing Aryna Sabalenka, who, by the way, even if Sabalenka lost the final, look at Sabalenka's year in the finals. She was a finalist in Australia, finalist in Roland Garros, semifinalist at Wimbledon, and even if she lost the U.S. Open, a finalist at the U.S. Open. That's a heck of a year for almost anybody, and yet she would probably be disappointed if she went winless in majors.
Or she would have been immensely disappointed because precisely for the what you just stated, that she comes so close. It wasn't just that she was in the final, 7-5 in the third to Madison Keys in Australia in the final, and then she loses a heartbreaker to Coco in three sets in Roland Garros, and then the Anisimova match also went down to the wire in three at Wimbledon in the semi. So in her mind, she could have won, or maybe even should have won all three. So it would have been disappointing not to defend the Open, but obviously that added a layer of pressure too, because it's her last chance of the season to do it, and maybe she felt like some of the other players, they weren't losing respect, but they were feeling like she was a bit more vulnerable than she had been. But boy, she was even more impressive to me in this Open than she was a year ago. It was a great tournament for her. She got one break, David, with a Vondrousova defaulting in the quarters, but she wasn't losing any sets before that. Then a great semifinal. That actually was one of my favorite matches of the tournament, the Pegula semifinal
Yeah.
with Sabalenka, because it was a rematch of last year's final, which went 5-5 to Sabalenka. This was three sets with just coming back from 4-2 down in the first set to win four games in a row and 16 out of 20 points. She put Sabalenka in a bind down a set. Sabalenka comes back strong in the second, and then the third was riveting because early break for Sabalenka, but then every time she served starting at 3-2, break points down there, break point down the next game, then serving for the match. Pegula saved two match points before Sabalenka served it out. So that was a really well played semifinal.
Steve, that semifinal day, both those matches, the other one would be Anisimova and
Right.
Osaka. That reminded me of, was it the 2021 when it was Jen Brady and
Oh
Osaka
yeah,
and
yeah.
Serena versus
Azar-
Azarenka. Azarenka.
Azarenka, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Three set, yeah. Similar. You're right. Those were two great semis too.
Blockbusters.
Yeah, and then a really good final as well. And yes, because we started with a more with this really well played. Then we go to Osaka playing Anisimova, and of course Naomi had beaten Coco. Naomi was playing really well. In her mind, I think she believed she was going to win a third U.S. Open title. She was very determined, and they went late into the night, and Anisimova lost 11 straight points at the beginning of the match. She was a nervous wreck, and then she got her bearings after being down 2-love in love 40, and she held on and took it to a tiebreak. Naomi served for the set at 5-4, couldn't close her, got her in the breaker. Second set, hard fought all the way. Naomi lost one game at 4-all from 40. Love on her serve, but broke back in the next game, and then got to 6-5. Love 15. I thought it was over there. I thought Osaka was going to close it out with a break. She didn't. Anisimova held her nerve beautifully, and then totally outplayed Naomi in a tiebreak. And then she opens up a comfortable third set lead, serves for the match at 5-3, and Naomi makes one last bid and has a couple of break points in the last game before finally she went out stylishly to make a one last stand at the end. But Anisimova was to beat Iga and Naomi. You know, you're beating two former champions there back to back, and now she's playing another champion in Sabalenka, and she gave a good account of herself in the final. David, you know,
Steve,
she
it was
back,
6-3, 5-3,
yeah,
Sabalenka. And it got very interesting. Anisimova gets up to 6-5. And then, I mean, Sabalenka and those tiebreakers, we used to talk about Novak, how he used to be in the lockdown mode.
yeah,
She's won, I think, 19 tiebreakers in a
yeah,
row.
she has, and 21 out of 22 altogether for the year, which is nuts. And yeah, listen, that was all the more impressive because serving for the match at 5-4, Sabalenka's 30 all, and she has what looks like a relatively easy overhead, and she didn't hit it. She didn't really, you could tell she was afraid to swing on it. Now, we've seen that happen to Novak too, but on the other hand, most of the time what happens to him is he babies the overhead a little bit. At least he gets it back in play. She netted it.
The
So,
lob was deceptively, it didn't look like, I mean, it wasn't a topspin lob. I mean, she was struggling to
no,
get the
no.
lob up in Anisimova, but it was a little bit deeper than I think everybody realized. And that's why I
Yeah,
think Sabalenka
but
struggled a little.
it was still near the service line. She was there, but she just, whatever the reason, she bungled the smash
Yeah.
and then lost her serve, which was surprising. And but you've seen it so many times, David. A player serves for a match, they're unable to close it. It's disappointing. And then you wonder when they now come around to serve again, trailing. In this case, 5-6 now, and Sabalenka has to serve her way into the tiebreak. She played a really good game and held at 15 there to get to the tiebreak. And then I think that, as usual, Anisimova hits an ace to start the breaker. And then what happens? Sabalenka wins 6 straight points and eventually wins at 7-3. It was a fitting way for her to close out that match, that it would be yet another fine tiebreak performance.
How about the mental fortitude? This is the third year in a row, if I'm correct. She's played an American in the final of the U.S. Open. She lost to Coco 2 years
Right,
ago. She
right.
beat Pagula last year, and she
Yeah,
now beats Amanda Anisimova. You know the
yeah.
crowd's rallying around the American. By the way, we have to say this is now the fifth slam in a row, going back to last year when Pagula was in the final, of an American female making the final of a slam. So
Right, right.
kudos to them.
Fantastic. No, you're right. Look, I'm obviously Coco was both Keys and Coco they won their finals. They each won majors this year. Coco winning her second, Madison winning her first, and Anisimova is going to join them, David, in the next couple of years. I don't have any doubt. Okay, so she lost her first two, but this was nothing like Wimbledon, where she was crippled by anxiety. Here, she had her bearing. Great crowd support. She had a little run in the first set too, 2-love down, and then broke twice. Went up 3-2 before Sabalenka closed the set with 4 games in a row. And then, as you already mentioned, she battled back in the second from 5-3 down and got it into a tiebreak. And really, you can't fault her much for what happened in the tiebreak. Sabalenka was just too good. So I think that was very encouraging to beat the players that she did and then acquit herself so well in the final. She's on her way. Two
Yeah.
two major finals, the two biggest tournaments in tennis. She gets to the finals in both.
And I think it's a feel-good story for all tennis fans. You know, they talk about the mental break that she took, but also, and we referred to it earlier, several years before that, you know, she goes to New York to prepare for the Open, and her dad passes away of a heart
Yeah,
attack, I believe. I
yeah.
mean, it's just she's been through a lot, and I think the tennis world is rooting for her. And she's, like you said, she's on her way, and she's going to get one of these soon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, that's a great way to back up what happened at Wimbledon. I mean, the fact that she'd been in the final women to then get to a final here. I don't think, frankly, a lot of people were expecting that to happen at all. And then you look at that path, and it potentially, if it hadn't have been Osaka, she would have had to beat Coco. The draw was not that ever going to be that easy, and yet she had those two big wins and then played a decent final. She's got to be pretty proud of what she did.
100%.
She ought to be proud. Yeah.
All right, let's go to the men. And I think when the draw opened and everybody was saying, okay, Alcaraz center, Alcaraz center, they're just distancing themselves further from the field. I think every tournament they play in. And we go back to the big three, and we always talk about there was the big three and a huge gap between 4, 5, and 6. Well, you're starting to feel that way with these two, and then the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth player. It's just these two are really up in the game for each other and making it difficult for anyone to make a dent in this rivalry. Steve, Alcaraz and Sinner, they've won the last 8 majors.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, they've split them all 4-4. They played the 3 consecutive Slam finals now. Over the last 2 seasons, Sinner's only 1-7 against Carlos.
Yeah, well, that's the tough part. He had led 4-3 in the rivalry, and then he lost 5 in a row. He ended that streak, that losing streak at Wimbledon. It was the best place to do it. Then, really, unfortunately for him, it counts as a loss what happened in Cincinnati, where he had to retire when he was sick, 5 love down. That's too bad. It also just didn't help that he wasn't fully fit, so give it a go and maybe beat Carlos again and get some more belief back. So yeah, he was fascinating about that. After he lost that 4-set final, and let's face it, it was not a typical 4-setter that you'd expect from them, or it was one of the more decisive 4-set wins I've seen, because Carlos lost his serve once, and that was to go down 3-1 in the second set, got broken at love. Otherwise, didn't even face a break point. And he won the first set. Carlos did 6-2, lost the second 6-3, wins the third 6-1.
That felt to me it took 15 minutes that third
Yeah,
set.
just about. And then it's 6-4 in the fourth, but again, one break and not troubled. And only in the last game did Sinner make much of a bid, because he saved 2 match points with Carlos serving for it at 5-4. So it was a very clear-cut win. And then Sinner talked about how he may need to make some changes. He may need to add some variety to his game. He's willing to lose more to other players in the process of developing. That's quite a statement. I'm a bit concerned about it, because the hallmark with him, the trademark, is that he's so solid. He's so aggressive, such a big hitter, big server, but doesn't miss much more percentage oriented than Carlos. So now if he's going to do this, I don't want to see him change too much. I hope the modifications are just slight, because he still wants to remain true to himself and the player he is. Plus, he didn't have a particularly good day. I mean, Carlos was soaring. Carlos was almost in the zone. It was just
Carlos forehand was
yeah,
unbelievable from the
yeah.
get-go, right out of the
Well,
chute.
the forehand was, yeah, it was. It was tremendous, and he wasn't missing much, and he was feeling the ball well. And then he made one smash near the end. He had a big love 30 point, and he has to take the smash on the bounce, and he slices it into the corner away from Sinner for a winner. Impossible shot. And that was the sort of the sense of the day, is that he could make every shot in the book, but above all, he was serving magnificently and giving Sinner no chances, which was putting Sinner under so much pressure on his own delivery. But I don't want to see Sinner think, I've got to completely change. There's nothing wrong with adding elements, drop shotting more, serve and volley a little here and there. There's things he could do, but I think he still wants to stick with his strengths too, and realize that look, at Wimbledon they worked. At Wimbledon he outplayed now Carlos. That wasn't Carlos's best day, but Sinner was first rate in that final, and it'd be really interesting to see where it goes from here, because Carlos is certainly awfully confident now about what he needs to do to beat Sinner. And he talked about how they spent all that time immediately after Wimbledon studying the Wimbledon final, and they were pointing to exactly. He didn't give away what they felt the game plan should be, but obviously it was very much targeted to, okay, what we know we can beat everybody else, but and I have been beating Yannick, but why did I lose this match, and what do I need to do to turn it around? And what a performance.
Steve, let me ask you this, and Sinner and his team is all class, and they never say this, but you being there and talking to so many people there, did you think Sinner was hindered at all yesterday with the oblique, that he had a trainer come out in the semi? And we're going to talk about the match with FAA in a little bit, but um, like you said, it was pretty decisive 4-set victory for Carlos, and Carlos played great. But did you think, when you're at this level, any dip is going to show between these two guys? Do
You
you
know,
think
it
he was hindered at all?
he didn't show it. It's a great question to raise it, David. I'm glad you brought it up. He didn't show it, but I do believe that injury couldn't. He tried to say that when he came back to the court against Felix that he was fine, but that's what you're gonna say in his shoes. You have to sometimes tell some white lies because you don't want to just say, yeah, to tell you the truth, I'm really worried about it. It's actually it's been bothering me for days. You just have to stay positive. But I do believe it could have been at least a slight factor out there that day because he served well. His service speeds were okay, but the percentage was terrible, and he finished under 50%, under 40% in the last set. I think something was a little off with him. Yes, I think physically he was just slightly off. It wasn't a serious.
That's all it takes at this level, Steve.
That's all it takes, and then you add that to Carlos being just in this dreamlike state. It's like he could not have put it down on a pad, written it out. This is what I want to do on the court. I mean, it came off as if he had simply gone out there that day and was playing a practice match, yet it was for real. He was that good. So I frankly think he wouldn't have lost under any circumstances the way he's playing. I just think had Sinner been more like Sinner, we would have had much tighter sets and it would have been a better match. But Carlos, I think, was unstoppable that day.
All right, so Carlos has 6 slams, Sinner has 4. We got a question from some of our most ardent fans. We'll leave them anonymous right now, but I want to ask you, and for the listeners, this is the first time Steve's going to hear this. So one of the questions is, I just said Carlos has 6, Sinner has 4, total of 10. The question is, will they surpass the slam totals of Pete and Andre? I'm going to answer that for you. Pete and Andre have a total of 22. The answer to that question is yes. Sinner and Carlos will surpass them. The tougher question, Steve, is will they surpass any 2 of the big 3? So, for example, Roger has 20, Rafa has 22, I think. So that's 44 right now. They have 10. That's, 34 more? That's a lot, Steve.
Well,
that's a lot.
But all the way up to Novak at 24. My guess now is
I said Roger and Rafa because it's less than Novak. It's a little easier to get to that number.
Yeah, no, my guess is at this point is that they will both end up. I'm thinking more that they end up around 18 and 16 or 17 and 15. Or I don't think they're going to hit the 20. That's my guess right now. It takes so many years. That means they got to stay healthy for so long. And what the 3 men did, the 3 icons, was just so extraordinary. And I think people don't understand that it's one thing for Roger to move past Pete with 14, but when you're now bringing the numbers up to 20, 22, 24, you see how many years that takes, even if you're pocketing 2 or 3 a year some years.
And they divided them up by 3 certain of those years, Steve. These guys only have to do 2, basically, if you're saying, Sinner and
right. Cup. It's true for now. That doesn't mean somebody doesn't move into the Djokovic slot and becomes more of a big 3. For the time being, it's definitely a big 2. But if I had to predict now, I'd say they fall just a little short, but they're definitely well up in the teens, both of them.
Yeah.
So that gets to your point about Pete and Andre. No, they'll go past Pete, both of them, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they're going to get to Roger at 20.
I'm in agreement with you on that. Good question. Thank you for the fans who brought that up, by the way. All right, a couple other things. I mentioned Felix Auger-Aliassime. I mean, holy smoke, Steve. Where did this come from? He beats Zverev, Rublev, and De Minaur. And I know it was late, his semi versus Sinner, but they had split. And he was up 2-1 on serve, and he had a number of break points.
Yes, he did.
On Sinner's serve at 2-1. If Felix gets that break, he didn't. But if he gets that break, that match becomes very, very interesting.
Oh, no, absolutely. Early in the third and early in the fourth, he had chances. The scoreline is very deceptive that way. Those sets could have been much closer, and he maybe might have stolen one of those sets. So, look, he played great. I didn't feel it was the best Sinner, but I thought it was the best Felix. I thought it was a better Felix than we saw when he lost to Medvedev in the semis 4 years ago. And I thought it was the best we've seen him play by far since early this season. I just hope he now will sustain the commitment and start, you know how it is, David. These great players, they beat themselves up in a way. They demand it of themselves. I mean, they look themselves in the mirror and say, "You have no excuse to lose. Get out there and get this job done." It requires fierce determination. The thing I've sensed in Felix up until now is sometimes he gets. I don't think he's lazy. He's not lazy, but a bit complacent at times. And I hope that doesn't happen now. I hope he realizes with 3 wins like that, when you're beating the likes of Zverev and Rublev and De Minaur, all great players, you earned your way into the penultimate round. Now let's take it from there. I'd like to see him have a good fall. He's excellent indoors. Make some good showings in the fall, and then go to Australia ready to make some kind of a bid, because he's electrifying. He's just a joy to watch, and he's a great personality, very likable. The crowds all enjoy him. So I hope he looks at this very differently than he looked at the last one, and says, okay, this time you're gonna make the most of it this time.
I hope you're right. I mean, we know he's capable. We just got to keep consistent now. Now, for the American men, we've said the American women have done so well. We talked about that earlier. The American men, we're still starving for it, and we had a guy who a lot of us was hoping going to make a really deep run. Not saying he would win it, but he just had a fantastic summer, and that's Ben Shelton. And unfortunately, playing a tricky opponent, Adrian Manarino, but he gets hurt, can't complete the match. You saw how upset he was. You saw his dad telling him to kind of, they're playing the long-term game, which is smart. But the hard part is, and I think why he was so crushed, was he knew he was playing his A game this summer, Steve, and he was looking to make a deep run in this tournament.
Oh, he'd had a great summer. He'd won a tournament. He was riding high. The crowds were going to get more and more effusive the deeper he went into that draw. He's comfortable going deep into slams. We've seen it a couple of times here 2 years ago against Djokovic, earlier in the year against Sinner in Australia. No, he's already demonstrably shown what he can do in majors. So this was a chance when he was playing maybe the best tennis of his life. But look, I hope I'm sure his father would say, look, you're young. You're going to have many more opportunities. You can't let this get in the way of the progress you've made. Just keep on keeping on, and he will. He's got a really positive attitude, and his father's got a lot to do with his success, the way he's groomed him. And it just was too bad for him and the New York fans that he didn't get to at least get to the quarters, and we see him in a big night match and playing one of the top guys. That was a
And
pity.
he loves that. He loves that atmosphere. He
Yeah,
loves
he
that.
does. He
So
does.
he'll have plenty. Like you said, I think he'll have plenty. Just stay healthy. Get fixed with what needs to be fixed, and he'll have plenty of opportunities in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, meantime, of course, we did get Fritz into the quarters, but
Yeah, I think when before you talk about Fritz, I think I'll preface it by saying there will be no one happier than Taylor Fritz when Novak Djokovic retires, because I think he's 0-11 against him now.
yes, yes. No, and obviously a lot of people thought maybe this would be the change because Novak's 38 now, but of course what they forgot is it was no accident that he'd been the preceding 3 semifinals of the majors and he made it 4 in a row. And look at some of the players Novak beat in the other majors. He beat Alcaraz in Australia to get to the semis before getting hurt against Zverev. He beat De Minaur at Wimbledon on his way to the semis there and losing to Sinner. I mean, he played great in Paris before losing to Sinner. He's shown that he's really, so when you look at it in terms of the majors, he's still the third best player in the world. So it was going to still take a tall order from Taylor. Now, he played well and he pushed it to 4 and got that third set, which was good that he didn't get demoralized after losing the first 2. But then funny enough, he said himself that he thought they both played their best in the fourth. He thought it was uneven for 3 sets. Neither one played that well in his view. But and he's right, because it all came down to just one break at the end with Taylor serving at 4-5 in the fourth. And Novak missed a couple of backhands on match points, which he was unhappy about when he spoke about it in the press conference later. He was a little disappointed by that. But then he kind of coaxed a double fault from Taylor on match point by moving back. He'd been altering his positional. He moved back and Taylor double faulted long, and that ended it. But it was, yeah, I mean, if there was going to be a time, that was it. But it was yet another. It just showed you how great Novak is at 38 and why he has such a dilemma trying to make this decision about where to go with his career from here, because he knows, he said afterwards of how hard it is to beat Alcaraz, or he knows it. He was virtually saying that it was going to be a very remote chance for him to beat them in best of five.
Yeah,
And
and how that, I mean, how the tides have turned. Obviously, the age plays the biggest part of it. Well, we always said that about the big three. Like, how are you guys going to beat these guys 3 out of 5?
yeah,
In a major, and it's almost impossible. Especially you'd say that Rafa at the French Open. Like, if you don't win the first set, you have no chance.
yeah, exactly. And look at the pattern of it. Okay, so Novak didn't get to play a full match in Australia, had to retire against Zverev, but then he loses in straight to Sinner, despite having the set points in the third set in Roland Garros. He loses in straight to Sinner at Wimbledon, where he was hobbled. And then here he loses in straight to Carlos, although he played pretty good first 2 sets, particularly second set. He lost the first 6-4 after getting broken in the opening game. And then he went up that break, was up 3-11 the second, which he lost in a tie break, which again is another interesting thing, is that he's got a losing record in tie breaks this year, which is really unusual for him. And then he didn't have much left. He lost the third 6-2. So, and he said he kind of ran out of gas. So he's got it's such a tricky thing. You know, you're still good enough to beat everybody else. Do something no 38-year-old man has ever done, to be in 4 straight Grand Slam, you know, make all 4 semis at the Slams in 1 year. And yet, is that good enough? And will he be satisfied if that's what he's doing next year, or it gets to be a little worse than that? It's not quite as good as that, because he's seeing that it's almost impossible that he could win a Slam without having to play at least one of the two of Alcaraz or Sinner, but most likely he's in a position where he'd have to beat both, and do it as he's approaching 39 years of age next spring. I don't know. I think he's got a lot of thinking to do to figure out what he wants to do now, because his standards are just so high.
Agreed. Yeah. It'll be interesting to, see how many tournaments he chooses to play and how he continues his health. Still, like you said, he's the third best player out there. So,
Yeah, think about it, David. It's the third best player out there, and also you mentioned about how much he plays, and like he didn't play between the French and Wimbledon. Didn't matter.
didn't matter.
He didn't play between Wimbledon and the Open.
Didn't
It
matter.
didn't matter. It's remarkable, but then the problem is, if he was younger, I mean, ideally you would play some just to get that much sharper going in, but he that option is worse for him, because then he'd come in a bit beat up, and he doesn't want to do that. Such difficult decisions to be made by him at this stage of his career.
Agreed. One more player I want to end with, Steve, is Coco Gauff. And
Yeah.
this is a player that I give a lot of credit for doing what she's trying to do here in real time in front of millions of people when you count viewers on TV. Coco struggled big time the first 2 rounds, and she got through it. She played a little bit better the third round. Then the fourth round, she played Osaka, and Osaka kind of, not kind of, she had a routine win
He
over
did.
Coco, and I predicted that, just because of Coco's recent form. Now, a lot of players with Coco, I mean, winning 2 slams already, she's still so young. A lot of players may be stubborn and just be like, this is my game. I'm going to try to improve my strengths as much as I can, and the weaknesses are the weaknesses. We'll try to, do what we can to kind of hide those. This is a player that's not stubborn, Steve, and she's playing the long game. And, with tennis, the season being so long, you don't have a long off season. Here's a player who's doing it live. She changes coaches, a serve tactician a week before the final slam of the year. And she's doing this in front of everybody. And obviously it's going to take time. I give her credit for doing this. She's not stubborn. She realizes her deficiencies, and she's trying everything possible to try to get better in those 2 areas because she has so many strengths. I don't know if a lot of players would have the courage to do this, Steve.
I agree. What I don't understand is the coach, McMillan. I don't understand what their thinking was to be doing this on the eve of the Open. I mean, it's an impossible task. And she was very emotional and teary at the changeovers at times, and understandably so, because this was so difficult for her to be worrying so much about her technique while you're trying to win a major. So I don't get why they just didn't let her leave that stuff alone until after the Open, and then say, you know what, we're skipping the next 3 terms. Maybe not even play the rest of the year in
Right.
the fall, and just or just played one tournament in the year end, but take a significant amount of time off and then work on it, because they just put her in the worst possible plight by doing what they did. So I agree with you. She was a good sport about it all. I don't get the thinking of her coach throwing all this at her with no time to adjust. And you could see by the time she played Naomi, she was a mess. And Naomi was terrific, but Naomi, almost every second serve went to Coco's forehand, and she got so many errant returns as a result. And they weren't necessarily great second serves, but Naomi was smart. And then Naomi also, from the baseline, just during the rallies, just kept pounding at the forehand and played a relatively conservative match by her standards and just kept extracting errors. I felt badly for Coco. Again, she handled that loss well, but it was so inevitable that something like this was going to happen. At least it was against a player of Osaka's caliber, who seems to be on her way back to her best form. She's done so much better this year than last year, and she had the great tournament up in Canada in the final, and now this semi, and so she looks like she'll end the year maybe in the top 10 if she can keep going like this. She could get back to the top 10. So no disgrace to lose to Osaka, but I hope they will take some time off from tournaments now and then really work on that technique on forehand and serve, and so that the next time she plays a tournament, she can be a little bit more automatic about what she's a little more instinctive and not so beleaguered by what all this extra information they're throwing at her.
Good point, Steve. All right, you were there 15 days. I'll leave it to you for the final word here. I know we hit on a number of players, but any final thoughts before we end this episode?
No. I just wonder. I'm looking forward to a lot more Carlos Sinner matches. I have to say, this one I was, as I already expressed, I was immensely impressed by Carlos, and he was inspiring to watch. I was sorry that Sinner couldn't be more top of the level. Obviously, Alcaraz, you could say that he wasn't at his best at Wimbledon, but it wasn't as drastic as this. Wimbledon, I know, as a four-setter, to me, was a much more competitive four-setter, and Carlos in defeat there played better compared to Sinner here. So I'm just hoping that Sinner, that he figures all this out in terms of the changes in his game, and that we continue to get riveting matches with them, and that we continue to get some different outcomes, because I think it's the best for the sport if Sinner wins his share too. And they're going to inevitably, I mean, we're talking that question about how many majors they once win is predicated on the fact that they're going to keep dominating the majors. There'll be an occasional one where they don't meet in the final, but I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, they met 3 straight finals to end this year at the majors. I'm not a bit surprised if they play 3 finals against each other next year, and three more the year after.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see, like you said, if there's a third player that enters into the equation. But all good stuff, Steve. I'm glad you had a great experience, as you always do. And that's it for the slams for the year. It's interesting. It goes quick, and I mean, you got the quick turnaround between the French and with Wimbledon right after the French Open. Then you got the summer hardcourt season. You end with the U.S. Open, and now we're in the fall part of the season. You got some Labor Cup, you got some Davis Cup, you got the fall swing. This was a good slam year. I can't believe we've done this another year as far as the slams being done, Steve.
Yeah, well, let's see. Once we start that French, David, that time goes so swiftly from the beginning of the French to the end of the U.S. Open. Yep. Just seems like a blink of an eye.
It really does. Thanks, Steve. This was so much fun.
Thank you.